Hello, dear foodie friends, and welcome to Kitchen Chat. It's so good to be here with you, and happy holidays. We have such a special guest today. I cannot wait for you to meet him. I'm sure you've heard of him, and he needs no introduction, but Max Tucci is a legend already. And he is a dear friend, a new friend. I want to say a huge thank you to our mutual friend, Jennifer English, for introducing us. We had such a fun time meeting each other at the International Association of Culinary Professional Awards in New York City recently at the Middleby Residential Showroom there in New York. And we just hit it off immediately. I just can't wait for you to hear his story and to get his book. I'm going to make sure I have a link. It's called The Delmonico Way, Sublime, Entertaining, and Legendary Recipes from the Restaurant That Made New York. Max Tucci, welcome to Kitchen Chat.
Welcome to Kitchen Chat. Hi, Kitchen Chat. Hi, Margaret McSweeney. And hi, also that are watching. Happy holidays. And first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, well, it is such an honor and a delight. I love how you begin this beautiful book and the dedication. And you dedicate it to the reader as well. And you say, and to the reader, I dedicate this book to you, with hopes that it will inspire you to celebrate life with elegance, grace, laughter, love, and intentions in the spirit of the Delmonico Way. What a treasure, Max. And during the holiday season, we especially celebrate, commemorate family, food, and friendship. And this is just a beautiful history, story with food, family, and friends. What inspired you to begin this labor of love?
Ancestors. Ancestors, ancestors, ancestors. You know, there's a wonderful proverb that says, every time we say their name, their spirit shall rise and meet us. So I love that the Gita, which teaches that for the soul, there's neither birth nor death, it is eternal and everlasting. So if my ancestors' spirit is everlasting, and if their legacy of what they created was the Delmonico Way, then it's only natural for me to say yes to them, to not remember them, but to acknowledge them. And not only to acknowledge them, but to say, even though they're not here, I see you, I hear you, you matter. And then we manifest the Delmonico Way.
Yes. And this took you, is it 15 years?
Margaret McSweeney, you did your research. Yes. Now, when we say 15 years, one would think that that is an extreme amount of insanity to do a cookbook for those who have done cookbooks. It wasn't 15 years working with Rizzoli. That was really about two and a half years. It was prior to that 13 years of research, of development, of understanding, of daydreaming, of concepts, and of turning those daydreams into a reality. You see, when I first, many years ago, was doing a television show called America's Next Top Model, I was pitched as a lifestyle expert with Tyra Banks. Yes. And that was season 1. And immediately following that, I started doing local cooking shows on News 12 Connecticut with Heather Kovar. The segment was called What's Cooking? And I was doing things to promote Delmonico's in the sense of my grandfather's run, my grandfather's legacy, my father's legacy, Oscar Tucci, Mary Tucci, Mario Tucci, Sesta Tucci, and also the Delmonico brothers. And so I was doing things, and I created a vodka at the time as well called Oscar's Delmonico Vodka. And so I received a call one day from a literary agent, and they said, we just read in Gotham magazine that you were listed as one of New York's most eligible bachelors. We want you to do a cookbook, a bachelor's cookbook. So they said, can you create one? Absolutely. So the book then I had titled Romancing the Stove. Romancing the Stove, with recipes that were like, oh, honey chicken, cocktails undo my tie. It was quirky. It was fun. My literary agent became pregnant, passed me to another agent. That agent wasn't so 100% about the project, dropped the ball. Rejection number one that I learned at the time was rejection is protection. So that book, even though it never happened at the time, and I'm not saying it's not going to happen, led me to another step and to another step of this wonderful life that was created for me by the Tucci family, my father, who was the producer of my life, I like to say. And they really paved this yellow brick road of magic for me. So that was the first rejection in the culinary industry.
Well, I love your persistence and perseverance. I think key traits that you have from your family and the vision that they saw. And as all of our Kitchen Chat friends know, the reason I do Kitchen Chat is to honor my father, who was a wonderful gourmet home chef. And my biggest regret in life was not really going into the kitchen with him, learning how to cook. So I'm on this quest to understand his joy. And I see that joy through you and your family's legacy. And Max, I don't know if you know this, but one of the recipes in this wonderful book is a childhood taste memory for myself. And I'm getting goosebumps as I'm sharing this. Every Saturday, without fail, my dad would make eggs Benedict with hollandaise sauce for me. And I have these memories of him diligently stirring whisking the hollandaise sauce. And can you share with the readers why eggs Benedict is important to Delmonico's?
Absolutely. So Eggs Benedict, they say, was created at Delmonico's. Now, to speak about the past, let's just for a moment go down history lane. So we have to talk about the past in order to really speed up to the present.
Yes.
And before we get into Eggs Benedict and the history, I want to share with you, since you opened your heart about your father, which is an intimate moment to talk about our loved ones who has passed. You know, there's a pain that never goes away. There's a grief that no matter how long we grieve for, we still wish for them to be with us, right? And I could weep now because, like you, my father died when I was 8 years old. So yes, we had these moments in the kitchen. Do I wish we had more? Every day. But do I know that I have more? Absolutely. Because every time I fire up a stove or every time I open these pages, I say their names. So they're always with me. And so for your father, my father, I'm sure they're celebrating together, knowing that we're here celebrating together, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
And so if that's my daydream, then that's a good place that I want to be in, to know that that's what's happening. So when we go down this past and when we go down history lane of food history, that's really the Delmonico Way. Yes, it's a book that was written in 2022 and released in 2022, but it goes back to the 1800s. And so Delmonico's restaurant, yes, people know it as America's first fine dining restaurant, which originated, 1827, it was a confectionery and it was a bake shop. By 1830, it was a restaurant. And it introduced the tablecloth, and it introduced the menu to the table, and introduced fine dining to New York and to America. So the Delmonico brothers, growing up Tucci, growing up Delmonico's, why am I a Tucci? Why am I not a Delmonico? So you'll have to read the book to find out why. However, I am the torchbearer for the Delmonicos and the Tuccis. And so Eggs Benedict, which is a wonderful recipe in the Delmonico Way, Sublime Entertaining, and legendary recipes from the restaurant that made New York, available now at all shopping platforms and local bookstores. Support local bookstores. You're in Washington, go to Bold Forks and Books. In New York, you're at Strand, LA, just go to local bookstores. If they don't have it, tell them you want it. And if the library doesn't have it, tell your local library to get it. So we have to do that plug. So Eggs Benedict, the recipe that I have for the book, there's a wonderful young lady who I met. Her name is Tara Cox. So cool. I call her the yolk queen. She loves eggs. She loves the yolk. She has a wonderful Instagram. She worked at Rachel Ray. So she understands eggs. She understands cooking, and she understands yolks. No yolk. She understands yolk. So in the book, you know, when I asked certain friends who are in the industry, because I'm not a chef, I've asked them, if Marilyn Monroe were coming to dinner, what would you serve her? If Cary Grant were coming to dinner, what would you serve him? And so it was fun to go into that daydream for cooks and chefs to say, oh, I know exactly what I would make. And so Tara Cox did for me baby eggs Benedict. And so eggs Benedict, yes, goes back to Delmonico's. Now, in order to say things were created there or invented there is a bold statement. So what I like to say is, wherever it was created or invented, one thing for sure is Delmonico's made it famous. And so we did 1,000 lunches a day under Oscar Tucci and Mario Tucci's proprietorship. 1,000 lunches a day. And eggs were served. Eggs Benedict was not like, oh, let's go to brunch and have eggs Benedict. There was no brunch. Delmonico's, under my grandfather, was closed on Sunday. So it wasn't like brunch and eggs Benedict. This was a lunch item. And so imagine all these Wall Street mavericks clamoring around the bar. The ticker tape is flying and they're ordering eggs Benedict or a Bloody Mary. And so they made it really a spectacular, legendary experience.
Oh, everything is spectacular about the Delmonico Way. And mentioning ticker tape, and as many of my foodie friends know, I was in the world of finance before food and worked in the Wall Street area and actually dined at Delmonico's. It was later in the 80s. I know it was different then. But it was so much fun reading the history in your book about how your grandfather was a brilliant businessman. He set up the ticker tapes there in the restaurant, so the stockbrokers, the people from Wall Street, didn't have to miss a beat.
Indeed. And you know, and that's the thing, what makes this a food history book as well. Look, I'm going to open to the page. Well, there's also chipped beef with poached eggs, which is delicious. Lots and lots of eggs were served there. But I'm going to open to the page where we speak about the ticker tape. Why? And here we go. Look, the ancestors are moving the computer. Why? Because when we go back to a 1972 newspaper article, and even one that goes back to 1966, they read, ticker service, Oscar's Delmonico, the restaurant with a stock exchange ticker on its premise, is briefing its waiters how to read and interpret ticker tape. Patrons from the Wall Street District, for the patrons from the Wall Street District. The ticker is a permanent fixture at the entrance, and then this was to the 125th year anniversary. But Oscar was the first one to put the ticker tape in the famous bar of Delmonico's.
Amazing. So
there's a little taste of the ticker. And that's what we did. You see, I had all of these wonderful ephemera and archives. And so Roberto Di Vitti Compich, who's the book designer, beautifully, this is one of the original ticker tapes that says, welcome to the New York Stock Exchange, 1972. Amazing. And underneath it is the first women's luncheon. Women were not allowed to dine unaccompanied by men until 1868. So yes, that day is important. April 20th, 1868. It's seared into my being. Why? Because previously to that afternoon, women were not allowed to dine unless they had a man. Now, it's not saying that that day everything changed and women were allowed to then dine without the company of man. But think, which is 1868, seems like a long time ago. But when we go back to the 1970s, which is not that long ago, was the first time that women were allowed to have a credit card without having a man co-sign for them. Wow. So what did Oscar do for the restaurant industry? Yes, the Delmonico's allowed women to eat there, but Oscar continued that tradition. He celebrated women. He hired women. He was the first restaurant to have my Aunt Mary work in the finances, his daughter. My Aunt Mary was the first woman in finances in a restaurant. She did the books. And he was clever because sometimes he would tell clients and patrons that that was his sister and not his daughter. So, you know, this is the history woven through with 75 recipes of food and cocktail.
I love this. And your grandfather, as I was saying before, truly a visionary in terms of knowing what is next, you know, honoring the past and being present in the present, but looking forward as well. He knew how to identify trends, even within food. And if you could maybe share with with us the story about the grapefruit and how we saw that trend.
I love that. Absolutely. You know, I was recently at the UN and there was a wonderful talk there about looking back, moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
And that was for advertisement. And I was thinking, the culinary industry also has to look back to move forward, right? And that was something, as you're a wonderful observer, that Oscar Tucci did. You know, I never met Oscar, and neither did you. But from these pages, we see that Oscar was this creative thinker, you know? There's that wonderful song that says, I close my eyes and I can see a world that's waiting up for me that I call my own, from The Greatest Showman. And I feel like that's what Oscar did. So Oscar's broiled grapefruit, simple, easy, 1, 2, 3 recipe. However, and I'm going to read from the book so that we have the tone of the pages. On page 58 of the Delmonico Way reads, Oscar's broiled grapefruit half with cherry. Oscar had an aptitude for spotting food trends. He figured out the next food of the moment and what diets were coming into fashion by visiting local markets. In 1929, the 18-day diet was also known as the grapefruit diet. It became all the rage. Those trying to slim down, including my own grandmother, permitted themselves 500 calories worth of grapefruit, orange, toast, eggs, and vegetables. This diet became so popular that Oscar added grapefruit to the menu. Now, this is where it gets really fun. My Aunt Mary was my Auntie Mame. She was my Auntie Mame. She shared with me everything in her heart, in her diary, in Turner Classic Movies. We would celebrate Delmonico's together. And she wanted me to remember my father and my grandfather. So when I say that my Aunt Mary told me that on occasion, loyal customer Marilyn Monroe begged Oscar in her soft voice to serve her grapefruit so that she could eat more. In the 1970s, grapefruit had another resurgence. And once again, this simple preparation was one of the most beloved items on the menu. And all you need is 1 grapefruit, 2 to 4 tablespoons of brown sugar, and cherries. And then you preheat the oiler, you slice the grapefruit in half, you drizzle the salt, the sugar on it. I like to put a little salt too. And I also like to sprinkle it with some honey as well. But we had to keep it in Oscar's tradition. And then you have the fabulous Oscar's broiled grapefruit with cherry. Now, everything on this page, every plate in this book, every single piece of ephemera, every single dish, every vessel, every container, every fork, knife, everything from knife rests are all from Delmonico's under my family's run. So I have this wonderful archive and collection. This is a beautiful Reed and Barton bowl with the green enamel. The dish is a Cobalt Tiffany dish. Tiffany's were doing the dishes for Delmonico's. And then this is another Reed and Barton vessel. And so this was for breadsticks and or we'd put crudité. You know, we didn't really have bread on the table. Crudité was all the rage. And there's a recipe for it in the book. So every single thing in this picture came from Delmonico's. And that goes for even the ginori. You know, my grandfather, being from Italy, loved ginori. And so what did he do? He introduced ginori to American restaurants. And here's the ginori dishes. At the time, the pattern was called Ercolano, which is from south near Vesuvius, the design. And Oscar put them on the table with Baccarat, Cristofal, and Lalique.
What an elegant man. Oh, I love this. And the fact that you still have these collections. So do you still use what you have? And I know that our viewers and listeners, especially this holiday season, What do you bring out? And was there any special tradition during the holidays that was passed along to you that you still celebrate?
Well,
And
tis the season, right?
yes.
Bring everything out. And if it breaks, who cares? And if you put in the dishwasher, that's okay. My father would kill me for saying that. But use it. You understand. Your father passed when you were young. Mine did too. Why are we saving things every day? So, I'm getting ready to do the Tamron Hall show. And
Yeah.
here I'm using I was making the Cherries Jubilee, preparing, what I'm going to say. And right here is one of the copper pans from Delmonico's.
Wow.
And so I use it. In the corner over here, I have one of the original, the knife rests from Delmonico's. That's the knife rest. Knife rest, that's the knife sharpener. The knife rests are in my head because every table needs to have knife rests.
Yes.
Every table. Traditions. One wonderful holiday tradition that my father kept were the Christmas photos. So we would all dress up, my sister and I, they would put us in these fancy, Florentine clothes from Principe, which is a store in Florence for children. And we would wear the velvet and, be the pulled up crocheted socks. And so we have all these wonderful family pictures. A tradition also that I still do today that I teach my niece and my nephew. My grandfather had an art of drying glasses. And the tip is in the book. The Delmonico Way is in the book, but also polishing silver, for those that polish it. In the book, I like to say that the patina is the perfection, but polishing silver, it's so gratifying because it's so instant and it's fun. Kids can do it. It's so much fun to have them because it's shiny and you're manifesting it into this glow. And so, cleaning silver was another one.
You have just given me a flashback of my dad. He would love to polish the silver before each holiday dinner. Thank you. I'd forgotten about that. And I need to get my silver out. I think it's very well patinaed.
The one thing, trays and bowls, okay. I give it a pass for not having those polished. But silverware on the table, there's no excuse. You must clean the silverware. And after you wash it, you must dry it with a beautiful, my grandfather used linen dish towels or terry, whatever you have in the kitchen. But it's very important to wash them and dry them. And the Delmonico Way, when you're serving a salad, take it one step further by placing the fork and the knife in the freezer with the plate that you're going to serve the salad on, so they're chilled.
I love that. And that is an easy takeaway that we all can do to elevate our lives in the Delmonico Way. So I'm curious, Max, did you grow up in elegance? I mean, was every day just an elegant experience? What was your childhood like, and how did the Delmonico Way shape you?
So there's duality to my childhood, right? Because with my father, those years were so magical. We grew up between Park Avenue, Florence, Italy, Greenwich, Connecticut. It was outrageous. And I don't say that to boast, I just say it to paint the picture.
Exactly.
And so my father loved to entertain. He loved to have celebrity over. He loved to have everything that was like the best, right? And so I grew up in that. That was all I knew. And that was all I knew for 8 years of my life. My father passes away. And now I start seeing a different dimension of life. That not everybody grows up in the Delmonico Way. That not everybody has different bedrooms to sleep in. I remember for the first time when my nanny took me to her apartment and her children shared a bed. I was like maybe 11 years old. And it was such an eye-opener that life was different for so many.
Right.
And so even though it was different, I must have been in me this Delmonico Way, because when we would cook together, I would still do those things that my father taught me. So I would be with my nanny and her children, and it was, we have to check to make sure there's no chips on the dishes. We have to make sure that, there's no chips on the glasses and the light bulbs, all the things that I was taught as a child. So everything that my father taught me in that short period of time, I then wanted to share. And so it was beautiful that at a young age, I remember doing this. And I remember like creating the Delmonico Way in other homes. And it opened my eyes up to see a whole different world. And that's when today, in retrospect, I can say, when Maya Angelou says, when we learn, teach, I was teaching at such a young age, the Delmonico Way.
I love that. You truly define hospitality. Viewers and listeners, I have to share a little story. We were at a fun after party celebration for the IACP Awards, and it's hard for me to balance. I think everyone can relate. Holding a drink, having the plate, trying not to let anything spill. And you came to my rescue, Max, because it was about to fall. And you said, here, let me take that. I mean, that is such a gift of hospitality, and seeing others, recognizing ahead of time what those individual needs might be, and not being afraid to help out. So thank you for.
Thank you. Well, you know, that comes from Oscar. Why?
Oh.
Oscar would always say, all are welcomed at my table.
Yes.
And there was this understanding of validation and acknowledgement. I see you, I hear you, you matter. Yeah. So if that's the tone that Oscar created, where he celebrated the guest, he then taught that to my father, to my aunt, that was passed down to me. Hospitality, the industry now, I believe, is so diluted. To be in the hospitality industry, for me and for others, and what I love to say is, before you love the business, you have to love people.
Yes.
You have to love humanity. Forget the brick and mortar, forget the chef, forget the pans and the stove you use. If you do not love people, then consider going into a different field. And so for me, naturally, my father loved people. I love people. My grandmother, my grandfather, we were people lovers and also observers. Mm-hmm. You know, yes, when I was little, it was check the light bulbs and check for chips. But what that makes me understand at a young age is look for the details. So if I can see you, I hear you, you matter. When you can't hold that glass, I don't need to ask you, may I hold your glass? I will go up to you and I will say, how may I be of service?
Yes. Yes, thank you. And the Delmonico Way is just, it should be an everyday life occurrence for everyone. I mean, just so many great takeaways in that, all in this fabulous book. And readers, or rather listeners and viewers, you will have a chance to win a copy for the holidays. I did get a copy for this. Since we are all about food, I do want to kind of take a big step back and then we'll step forward. Can you share with us about this incredible chef at the original Delmonico's? It was Charles
Ranhoff. Yes, I have his book. It was the original Epicurean cookbook with over 3,000 recipes. Naturally, in this kitchen, you know, you're getting a very narrow take of it. But if there were a fisheye view, you would see that I have cookbooks over there and other cookbooks over there. And so I do surround myself with that. Charles Ranhofer was not technically the first celebrity chef, maybe for fine dining in New York. But what he understood naturally was food, and he was a huge teacher of food. Every recipe in the book had steps, and it wasn't just one recipe. It was first you compile this recipe, and if you're doing, let's say, a duck orange, first you do the orange, then you have to get the duck, then you, so many steps, and you're flipping back and forth to the book. And so naturally there's a ribbon in the book. And so I say that because when I was doing this book, we have a ribbon in the book. And this, again, intention. This pink, you don't really see it on camera, but when whoever the lucky person is that wins it, or if you buy it, thank you, thank you, thank you. This pink ribbon was the color of the tablecloths that my father used in the restaurant. And the same tablecloths that he used in New York, he introduced to Harry's Bar in Florence, Italy. Wow. So when we go back to Charles Ranhofer and we think about this incredible person who created so many dishes, and fair to say invented so many as well, some that we don't even use today or cook today or even know of today. It's a beautiful, that's why I love books, because they can transport us back to that moment, that gilded age of Delmonico's. and we can open that book. That book, I know it's online, it's astronomically expensive. So it's fun to be able to go back into that. And I took some of that and I put it into this book. But really, he understood food. Now, whether or not he understood clients or the restaurant, that I don't know. You know, I do know that he was a lot of the times in the back of the house and the Delmonico brothers were in the front of the house. And to be bold, Margaret McSweeney, your name is the name that I have to say together. Margaret McSweeney. To be bold and to make this statement, I believe, and we spoke about this, but in my core, I truly feel that the moment that hospitality changed was when the chef became the celebrity. And I know that a lot of people come at me for that. And I say it in a way where when I experience those who want to dine because of a Michelin star or because of the chef being the celebrity, I feel as if they take away the experience because the guest is the one that should be celebrated. Now, I'm not saying that the chef and the cuisine shouldn't be celebrated as well. But for me, it's always having the guests celebrated first. And I believe there's a little bit of disconnect and ego. You know, it's nothing new to the culinary world that chefs have ego. I think that's why they're so brilliant at what they do, because they strive to be the best. But when that comes into play and I see you, I hear you, you matter, how may it be of service to you becomes replaced with, we don't have a reservation for 3 months. Oh, you don't like your meal? I'm sorry. You know, it becomes a little bit of a disappointment. Yes, expectations lead to limitations. So if the expectation is to go there and be celebrated, for me, that's what I like to teach, what I like to do, and what I know, because that's what happened at my father's and grandfather's Delmonico's.
I love that. And it's going down to the crux of the matter. And I'll never forget what Ann Willen shared with me in a kitchen chat, where she said, well, she actually wrote me an email. When backstory here, I'll share it with you. It was so much fun. I made her hollandaise sauce and sent her an email.
For the Eggs Benedict.
And I said, I'm so sorry. And I made it a little runny. And she says, no worry, you can add flour. I forget what the exact directions were. But she said, just know that it's the act of cooking that is love. That is how you express love for others. So back to what you were saying, it kind of takes a step back in terms of cooking for love and cooking for others. And
you know, the experience of love is something that when we experience it and we don't realize we're experiencing it because we're so used to it, we're blessed. Yes. But for those who haven't experienced love and a dish is prepared for them out of love, it changes every cell and fiber in that dish prepared. And so for me to be able to share love, for sure it's in cooking. Listen, the whole movie was done called soul food, right? Yeah. There's a whole genre of food, soul food, because it's made with the soul out of love. And so intentions, you, from the top of the show, you said intentions. I say have intentions while setting the table and have intentions while preparing your food. If you're pissed off that day, go to dinner. Don't make it. Because that energy, I feel, you know, this wooden spoon, even though at one point it's a tree, it was alive, it's wood. It holds that energy, I believe. That it holds that energy, and then it transports that energy into what you're making. When we cook food or prepare food out of love, it always tastes better. So serve a dish of love this holiday season.
I love that. Love that. So I shared with you my taste memory from childhood, Eggs Benedict. What has been your taste memory along the Delmonico Way?
Well, my taste memory, the one that comes first to mind is one that I literally could weep. It's not in the book, but I write about it. I believe I write about it. You know, the books, by the time they're done, there's so many things that have been edited that it's like, oh, why was that cut out? But my Aunt Mary, she used to make me pastina with zucchini. Simple. Pastina in a chicken broth zucchini, Parmigiano cheese. And I can still remember how she served it. It was on, when we show white glove service on the front of this, and when we show the silver tray, it's not to show of, to be bold and of snobbery. It's to show that attention to detail was so important to the Tucci family. So Aunt Mary used to serve it on a sterling silver tray. There was a placemat that was from Italy that on the corner said buongiorno, on the other corner said good morning, and there was a little rooster on it. Now, this was in the evening when I would go and I would watch Turner Classic Movies with her. She would bring me this tray. I still remember the tablecloth, and I can still feel and smell the pastina, but most importantly, the Parmigiano cheese. For me, that is one of my earliest memories. And truffles. And this is a crazy one because when I was 16 months old, we took the QE2 from New York to England. And that's the first time my sister and I both experienced caviar. So it was, yes, there was this ridiculous silver spoon that we were born with, and I feel like I almost grew up backwards, where I had all of this then with my father, but how I wish I had my father with all of this now, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, yes, pull out the stupid silver spoon. By no means do I want to sound pretentious. These were just things that my father wanted us to be exposed to. And so it was a very unique childhood, but one thing I also love on the flip, we have to have this duality of life. Yes. I love Taco Bell and I love Velveeta shells. I love to squeeze the cheese out and then add butter to it and make those Velveeta shells.
Oh, I love that. But it'll be served on a silver platter. So
and Ginori.
Yes, you can still have the Delmonico Way in anything that you do. So let's take a peek forward. What do you think is next, not only for you in the industry, but also for the industry itself?
So, as we know, the future of food and hospitality right now is take home and delivery.
Yes.
This has to change. We have to put down the phones. We have to stop ordering our groceries online. We have to stop expecting someone to bring us our food in a box or a bag that makes the food horrible when it arrives. We have to experience again. But when we had this pause for 2 years, for me, there's a wonderful phrase in the Bible that says, be still and know.
Yes.
Be still and know. And so in those 2 years of pause, it gave me a lot of time to reflect that I'm no longer going to be fast food, right? I'm no longer going to allow experiences of food to be diminished or to not be tangible because I have accessibility to a phone.
Right.
So whether or not that's everyone else's feeling, for mine, I would love to say that the future of food and hospitality would benefit from putting the phone down and from going and experiencing. A wonderful restaurant in New York called El Posto Accanto. Every morning goes to the market, picks the food, makes it with intention, makes it with love. It's delicious. And then how do we minimize that? By ordering from an online service that will bring it to our home, but yet there's a component missing. So for me, the future of food and hospitality, I would like to see hospitality be the key word for the future.
Wonderful.
I would like to see people like Oscar Tucci welcoming all to their table.
Yes.
Not just picking and not just saying this one or that one. Welcoming all, including all.
Yes.
I would like to see food prepared in ways where we're saying out of love, where we strip the ego out of the kitchen and replace it with love, where we know where our food comes from. I'm sitting here in this kitchen. We bought a farm during COVID. It is a non-working dairy farm. I call it the non-working working farm. And so we have 11 acres here. And I'm thinking, why do I have this land? What is the importance of farming? And when I hear things of artificial AI, artificial intelligence, greenhouses that can produce 100,000 heads of lettuce a year, Yes, it's wonderful and it's amazing, and the future of technology is incredible with food. But there's also the disconnect. You know, there's that bumper sticker that says no farmers, no food. So we have to take it, understand, you know, they say from the fork to the mouth, or I like to go further and say from the seed to the tongue, right?
Yeah.
Where is this coming from? Now, yes, I'm a daydreamer and I like to create, you know, manifest. And I believe if I see it in my mind, it's created in my reality. The real takeaway from all of this is, yes, I like to give, you know, my perspective of things. But hospitality to me is, again, I want to feel welcomed when I go somewhere. And not because I want it. I want to feel people like my grandfather saying, welcome. How may I be of service to you? So we kind of go back to the days of Emily Post, right? Yeah. And we understand, yes, it's, you know, a Pollyanna world that I can live in, but I don't mind living in that world. For me, for the future, you know, I live in the moment and I'm always available. I've been several times during this book tour, I've been asked, would you open another restaurant? Would you get involved in the industry? And I said, until I meet a group that has the same understanding that Oscar Tucci and Mario Tucci had, I will decline. So I'm going to stick to writing books for right now. Hopefully Rizzoli, who published my book, huge shout out to my entire team. You know, there's that saying that it takes a village. For me, I don't believe it takes a village, because not everybody in the village is on your team. It takes a tribe. It takes a group of people who can see the vision. This book has been, not this book, but the projects that I've been working on to get this book done have been rejected 20 times, if not more. Editors said no, publishers said no, literary agents said no. And I interviewed on my show, Max and Friends, a wonderful woman by the name of Sherry Salata. Sherry Salata was the executive producer of the Oprah Winfrey Show for 25 years. And she wrote a book called The Beautiful No. And what does the beautiful no mean? That rejection is protection. That all of those people that said no to me, what they did was they led me to the person. The beautiful no will lead you to the divine yes. And so when Charles at Rizzoli said yes to this project, I had thrown a party for Whoopi Goldberg at Delmonico's. It was the last one that I threw in conjunction with the previous owners and partners of Delmonico's. And Whoopi wrote a book called The Unqualified Hostess. I do it my way so you can do it yours. Rizzoli had published the book. Charles was there. I threw this party for Whoopi. It was a great time. Charles was observing me. And we had conversation. And he said, more or less, and those who know Charles, he came over and he said, why don't you have a book? And I said, well, Charles, because I paused. Now, mind you, we're in Delmonico's, so that energy of ancestors is all around me. Yes. I paused and I said to myself, what am I going to do? My response to Charles was, that's because you haven't published it. And my agent is here and we'll take a meeting with you. And he obliged. And so I went in and I shared with him what I wanted to do. And I'm paraphrasing, but he said to me more or less, he understood why people were saying no. And this is what he wanted me to do with the book. He wanted to see the Delmonico Way through my eyes, through my stories, through what I learned as a child, through what my grandfather, my father, my aunt, my mother taught me about the hospitality world, about the culinary industry, about restaurants. And he wanted it from my perspective instead of just telling stories about my grandfather. So in that moment, I got it. It was that aha moment, that beautiful yes. And he goes, and if you can do that, you'll have a deal. So Charles, thank you. Then Caitlin, my editor, Natalie, and then Jennifer Arce, who's the photographer. This is her first book, first book. And I was interviewing photographers. I had one already lined up. And there was something energetically that I feel didn't shift, didn't vibe. And so I said, I'm going to look around. There's that wonderful saying, what you're looking for is looking for you. Yes. And so I'm on Instagram and I see ARC food photography. And I said, who is this? Who is this? ARC food photography. And as I'm scrolling through her pages, what I'm seeing is this incredible talent. And I'm thinking to myself, these are the pages of the Delmonico Way. This is her IG. So, and I called her up and I said, I'm interviewing Jennifer. And I said, Jennifer, tell me why you would want to do this project. And she said, it has always been my dream to do a cookbook. I love being a dream facilitator. I love helping facilitate dreams. So in that moment, I said to her, well, you're going to have to dream bigger because you're getting this book. And so she was overwhelmed with joy. And then my food stylist, Kimberly, and her assistant, Phyllis. You know, it takes so many people to make a book. So I want to just acknowledge them all, because for my future, this is the team that I want to work with again. And I would love to do a book strictly on cocktails. And so I have over 250 recipes from the Delmonico books. And so what I said to myself was, the next book I would like to title The Tucci Way.
Yes.
Sublime spirits and legendary libations from the bar that made New York.
Oh.
So it's my first time sharing it publicly. And I believe that when the intentions are to honor and, you know, respect those that came before us and those that are around us, the universe might rise up and meet me.
Absolutely. And I call those moments hugs from heaven.
I love that. They are big hugs from heaven. And another hug from heaven, you know, with this barn, I want to do the Delmonico Way dinners where I invite chefs to come and cook. I have a 6,000 square foot barn that belonged to one of the most incredible artists named Daniel Green, who painted all of the portraits for presidents and Fortune 500s. This was his home, and his wife, Wendy Green, who we became very close friends with. Prior to that, Ezra Stoller, his daughter, owned this home, and he did, famous photographer, mid-century. Prior to them was Valerie Clairbout, who was the woman who did the angels that are in Rockefeller Center.
Wow.
So there's this energy here that I feel it would only be appropriate to do these dinners and bring in chefs and welcome all like my grandfather did to my table.
I love that. So many great things ahead. Well, the one way I enjoy ending the show, and I could talk for hours and hours with you. This is just so much fun. But I'd like to leave the listeners and viewers with the top 3 tips, I guess, in this case, usually for cooking, but for you, I'll ask, what are the top 3 tips for entertaining, especially this holiday season, that are easy to take away in the Delmonico Way?
Number 1, welcome all to your table. In the acknowledgments of the book, I say, and this to me is one of the most biggest takeaways, and that's why I left it for the end of the book, to express gratitude is to be fully immersed in the Delmonico Way. Express gratitude. Express gratitude. And a fun tip for food related, like we had said in the top of the show, if you're going to make a salad, chill the plate, chill the forks and knives, and make sure that when you serve a salad, it's not on a warm dish, because you would make Oscar crazy. If there is an earthquake at night because you have served salad on a warm dish, it is Oscar rolling in his grave.
I love this.
And also chill the glasses. Too, the Delmonico Way is taking things one step further, making sure that all of the light bulbs are in the house are working, that the glasses aren't chipped, acknowledging and noticing and creating an environment where when people leave, they might not remember what they ate, what they drank, but they will remember how you treated them. So treat them with love.
I love that. And I just want to read again, dear foodie friends, the way I began this interview. To me, it sounds not only a dedication, but an invitation that you write, where you say, and to the reader, I dedicate this book to you with hopes that it will inspire you to celebrate life with elegance, grace, laughter, love, and intentions in the spirit of the Delmonico Way. Thank you so much, Max Tucci, for being on Kitchen Chat today.
It's been my pleasure. But before we go, Margaret, what was your father's name? What is your father's name?
Yes, Claude Ray, Dr. Claude H. Ray
I
Jr.
love it. So we raise a glass to Dr. Claude Ray.
Yes.
And we raise a glass. Here, I'm going to raise a bowl because I was eating Cherry's Jubilee. So he might have liked this better. So I will raise a bowl of Cherry's Jubilee, old Delmonico style, to your father, to my father, to all that are watching. Your ancestors are around you. Acknowledge them. Cheers.
Cheers. This is my father's china, Christmas china.
Cheers,
Well,
cheers, cheers.
Cheers. Oh, thank you, Max. And thank you, dear foodie friends, for joining us today here on Kitchen Chat. I will make sure there's a link to all the information you need to know about Max, as well as to his new book, The Delmonico Way. And I hope that you will enter the contest, details to be provided on Instagram, for a chance to win this for the holidays. But even if you don't win it, go get this. It's under $50, a great gift, not only to give yourself, but also friends, families, colleagues, to share the gratitude of the Delmonico Way. And also, dear foodie friends, during this very busy season, always remember to take a moment and savor the day.